Good evening, this is the Oscar Expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time for final Oscar predictions. We've got a lot of categories that we're very uncertain about, we're very excited to predict, and it's Matt Neglia from Next Best Picture. Flying in from Geedy Prime, I see.
Well, I had to get away from the Black Sun and come join you guys for final Oscar predictions.
And it's a good thing, too, because we really needed your help.
Do you? I feel like this is a pretty secure year.
No.
Right? We're going to go 23 for 23.
I don't know about maybe you guys will, but I just don't feel very confident in my predictions this year. There's a lot that I need to discuss.
But that's what we're here for.
I see. That's why you have friends. Friends with helping hands to
so
help.
You can yell at people about the things that you're obsessed with, and they don't shun you.
Let's just start out with Best Picture. I mean, this is a category where you don't need to even tune in.
You don't need our expertise. Everyone knows Oppenheimer's winning. There's not a chance it's not going to win. Even you were saying, when you talk to voters, it's the one movie that everybody cares about.
It's ranking up there very high on people's ballots. Oppenheimer really, truly is a juggernaut, the likes of which that we rarely see. And what I mean by that is not so much like from a precursor standpoint. I'm talking critics, box office, industry. This is Titanic, Forrest Gump, Lord of the Rings. You know, you think about films that just hit so well with every single sector.
It's the kind of winner that we forgot exists, and we've almost felt like it couldn't exist today because we get a lot of indie winners and a lot of like the little engine that could's winning Best Picture. But this just really reminded us that those movies are still possible and they can't exist.
Best Director, we everybody knows it. It's Nolan's time. It's his year. Congrats, Christopher Nolan, on your Oscar. It makes the most sense that anything could ever make.
Yep. Clean sweep. It's 100% deserved. This is the guy who single-handedly forced the Academy to essentially include more Best Picture nominees in their lineup following The Dark Knight not getting a Best Picture nomination. This has been building up for a very long time.
Best Actor, we all agree it's Cillian Murphy now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And after the SAG
combo,
after the SAG, you had to agree that it's Cillian Murphy. And, you know, for a while it was a race that people thought was maybe up in the air with Paul Giamatti. But when Cillian Murphy won that SAG award, then there's no denying it. There's no way. Perhaps we shouldn't have doubted it all along, because this is the lead performance in a biopic that's going to do one of the great biopic sweeps that the Oscars have ever had.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes quite a lot of sense.
Early on in the season, you know, a lot of people thought, you know, maybe this is Bradley Cooper's time with however many nominations he's going to have at this point with Maestro. Then Paul Giamatti winning Critics' Choice was something that made people go, wait a minute, are they about to now give him SAG and give him a path to a first-time win? But that didn't end up happening. We're at a point in the season where it's just undeniable. Now, with that said, though, Giamatti does have Critics' Choice and he does have Globe. So is this like 100% guaranteed? No. But I would say it's a very, very large percentage, because Critics' Choice and Golden Globe, while he got afforded television time to deliver speeches, there's no industry crossover. SAG and BAFTA is the winning combination that you want to have. Cillian Murphy has it.
All right, Best Actress. This is the first category that there's like a real debate to be had. It seems like everybody is acknowledging that it's a close race, but nearly everybody's leaning the same way.
Everyone's looking at last year, and everyone's saying, well, Kate Blanchett had Critics' Choice, BAFTA, and Golden Globe, and Michelle Yeoh had Golden Globe and SAG. This year, Lily Gladstone has Golden Globe, SAG, and Emma Stone has Critics' Choice, BAFTA. That's what everyone's looking to from a stats standpoint. I do think this is radically different, though, from last year. The other thing that they hold in common is Lily Gladstone's win would be history-making, which is something that this Academy, like this membership of the Academy, loves to do. They love creating those moments. At the same time, Killers of the Flower Moon is not winning Best Picture, like Everything Everywhere All at Once was last year. I think this is tighter. I think this is more difficult, but there is also something to be said for the fact that Lily Gladstone won at SAG, which was the last televised award before voting closed. So that is the one that's freshest on voters' minds. But voters who decide to turn in their ballots before SAG and already had their minds made up, you could argue maybe were leaning towards Emma Stone. Why? Because she, up until that point, had been on a streak winning Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, and BAFTA. And there's no denying, like, I'm sorry, I know it's insulting and I know it's redundant, and I don't like it either personally, but there's no denying that there are some voters, and I've heard this, who think that Gladstone's performance is not as substantial as what Emma Stone does with Poor Things. In regards to, like, Emma Stone is the focal point of Poor Things. But there are a lot of people who also feel that she is that movie. and she is the thing that makes the movie work. She's the beating heart of that film.
All these factors made me think that Emma Stone might have had the edge at SAG too, because SAG tends to also go with like that big showier performance, which I think is easily Emma Stone.
And Poor Things is more of a populist movie than Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
Well, they're both. I mean,
You know,
they're both like.
and SAG's genre is supposed to be that they're populist because their voting base is so enormous.
That's why Lily winning at SAG at this point in the race was, I think, so monumental.
Right.
Like that really was a needle moving moment for her. And it's a win that people can feel good about too. You know, you're hearing Kate Winslet saying how she was so moved by Lily Gladstone's speech and her performance. You know, that's the kind of stuff that matters. I always hear this all the time, like these, like the reasons why people vote should be merit-based. It should be about performance. It should not be about these outside factors. It is about these outside factors. It's always about these outside factors. You can't deny it, especially with a voting body that's 10,000 people.
But before last year, I remember thinking about the year where they didn't give it to Chadwick Boseman and they gave it to Frances McDormand, who nobody was like, oh, give her third Oscar, like we need this. That year and before, it seemed like BAFTA was really crucial, especially for Best Actress, but also for leading categories in general. And they determined a lot of the tiebreakers. It must not be a coincidence exactly that the year that stopped was the year that they weren't last. And if that continues, then a lot of people are going to say, well, this really proves that whoever goes last is pretty goddamn important. Maybe it is. I still think that I'm going to have to go with like where the momentum seems to be. I don't even think it's a gut feeling for me. I just think that if I want to be right, I should probably go with Lily Gladstone. Like I do think that Poor Things seems like a stronger contender than Killers, and that was also a factor. But again, all these things factored into why I thought maybe SAG wouldn't even do Lily Gladstone, and they did. And
Yeah, I think if Poor Things was winning Best Picture, it would be different, but I think I'm gonna agree. We can consider all the factors. They look pretty equal, but my premonition tells me that Lily Gladstone will be on the stage. That's all I got. I might be very wrong, and it'll be a fun reaction if I'm wrong.
I don't think that if you pick Emma Stone that you are like off base at all.
No.
I'm going with Lily Gladstone because it just feels right in my gut.
or even some people would say Olivia Colman winning for The Favorite, you know, trumped a narrative for Glenn Close. On the other hand, though, I think people felt very enthusiastic about Olivia Colman. So.
I mean, that's the thing too. Like last year, we just saw 4 wins where the narrative was super important.
And then some years it's kind of the opposite. You never know what year you're going to get. We could probably breeze through the next two. Supporting Actress. This is as no-brainer as this category gets.
Yep.
Classic supporting sweeper. Divine Joy Randolph is taking the Oscar. There's no questions about it. Pretty much everybody that I would even talk to is like, yeah, if I were to pick one person from this category, it would be her.
As done as you can get.
And perhaps as done is supporting actor, where Robert Downey Jr. faces pretty much no competition, no roadblocks to winning the award, even though it seemed like a lot of his competitors like Mark Ruffalo and Ryan Gosling were pretty strong. Like they're just not. I remember early on when Oppenheimer reactions were coming out and people were starting to praise him and saying that he'd get nominated, I was like, if he gets nominated, that guy's gonna win.
Yep.
The narrative just made a lot of sense to me. It makes sense that people just love Robert Downey Jr. as a person, him coming off of Marvel.
And he's an Oppenheimer. What else do you want?
Original screenplay. This category is pretty interesting because there's only one movie in the lineup that has 1 precursors, isn't there?
Golden Globe Anatomy of a Fall won, which was definitely surprising. I also remember too, very on a more minor level, like Anatomy of a Fall winning at Gotham was a surprise. So then we head on over to BAFTA, and by this point, Anatomy was widely predicted to win there, and it did. So it's like you can give that more of the edge because it has BAFTA and it has Globe. But there are these little tiny asterisks next to it. And of course, this year we don't have WGA, which is rather unfortunate. But at the same time, I keep playing the scenario out in my head. If Barbie wins WGA, who cares? It's not nominated here at the Oscars.
That's what I think would probably happen.
If it's the holdovers, then we have a conversation. But at the same time,
Anatomy's not even going to be eligible for WGA.
it's not. We have not had a chance to have a category without Barbie. How does that tip the votes? You know, Neon brilliantly handled the campaign for this movie at a time where voting was occurring. They had Messi the dog getting out there and doing interviews with people.
That dog took off.
Right?
Yeah.
They were highlighting the script, the screenplay, and like I saw a lot of digital ads, especially that confrontational
That monologue
fight.
got posted everywhere,
Right.
which, as it should.
Yes, I think it worked. I was talking to one voter who did say to me that think about all the movies in that category and which movie, when it was over, did you find yourself thinking about the most when it was over? Some could say Past Lives, and I would agree with that. But Past Lives, I think, has lost a tremendous amount of momentum. Came out in the summer. It was a little tiny movie. Anatomy, though, is a film that lingers with people. It is a film that gets people thinking. It's a film that gets people talking when it's over. I do see a path, a very narrow path for holdover stop sets, especially if on April 14th, it wins WGA and we're like, well, okay, there you go. Like that's the way this would have happened. But I do think it's going to be Anatomy, and that is what I'm officially going with.
Holdovers would also be one of the only films in recent years to win screenplay that isn't a writer-director.
Who is the only person in this category that you can give to the award who's nominated for director? It's Justine Triet. That just puts her in a position where like people recognize the filmmaker a lot here.
And you know what, too? It's also like sort of revenge for France not selecting it for international feature because they can't give it that award. People made sure that just because France didn't select it, that this movie was not forgotten about.
Yeah, I think the movie was also just too good. With the actress nomination feeling so in there, the screenplay nomination was like a guarantee.
Yeah.
With those two things in the bag, like a Best Picture within a year of 10 is easy.
I remember people saying that when it didn't get the selection, people saying, oh, it's Best Picture, chances are done. And I was like,
people do this all the time where like one little thing happens in like October and they think it's over. I remember the shortlist came out and Everything Everywhere didn't make like makeup. Even though it got 3 of them, it didn't make visual effects, and people were like, guys, I'm telling you, it's over. I was telling you all along.
The Academy's old. They don't like it.
I think you got to go with what is precursors. And also, Anatomy of a Fall got 5 major nominations. BAFTA and Golden Globe were similar in how they embraced the movie, and then they gave it screenplay. The guilds hate foreign films. The Critics' Choice also hates foreign films. And they didn't nominate it.
And you know who doesn't hate foreign films nowadays? The Academy.
The Oscars. It's going to be a great win, and I think it's very likely to happen.
But
adapted screenplay is looking very much in one direction as well, because American Fiction, although it's competing with Barbie, and I would argue that is really Barbie and Oppenheimer, two big. What's going on here?
Do you remember when we were at TIFF and we saw this movie? Do you remember our conversation walking out?
You're like, I don't think it's going to get awards.
We denied it.
Yeah.
We denied
like,
it. Did you predict it right after?
Oh, yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Everything?
I said right away, that is a picture contender. That is a screenplay contender. The way that audience reacted to that movie, and then it won the People's Choice Award, and it was like...
Well, yeah.
I do feel this is one where early on, people just didn't see it like as that kind of film. Even when it won CCA. When it won CCA, I was like, it's on the path. I know it's going to happen. WGA, and, you know, I never in a million years thought it would win BAFTA. That was genuinely shocking.
That was
exactly.
But, but that, like, sealed the deal.
I thought that Barbie was on track for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, yeah, American Fiction's going to win, you know, Critics' Choice. And hypothetically, I think it would take WGA, but so is Barbie. But the problem with Barbie is that it's not doing shit. And I think that the gas on that movie is, you know, it's running on low. It needs to visit the station. There's not enough time. I'm going to bring this up in other categories as well, because I thought for a while that Barbie would take like 4 Oscars, but I just don't see it anymore. The Oscars snubbed it in directing and editing and actress. It just wasn't embraced on the level that like critics groups were. I don't know why
BAFTAs didn't care about it.
I don't know why it is that critics groups were so much more over the moon for Barbie than the Oscars would be.
Well, the Critics' Choice, really, right?
No, critics groups in general were like going crazy for like Greta.
Yeah, that's actually interesting that it was the most embraced by critics groups.
I just think when you present that movie to voters within the industry, there's 3 opinions that at least I've heard from people. One is love the movie, hence why it is where it is. It has a Best Picture nomination. But then the other 2 opinions that I've heard consistently throughout the season about it have been, well, that movie's not serious. Like, that's silly, right? Like, you know, we're really doing this? Like, Barbie? Yeah, like, really? And then the 3rd opinion that I've heard from people is, I like it. It's a good movie, but, you know, that's what the money's for. Yeah. Why do we need to give it more awards? Like, it's already got the biggest award in the industry that there is. That is a really real belief amongst a lot of people sometimes, is I don't need to give more praise to something that's already gotten such praise.
Which is sort of funny because Oppenheimer has so much praise, but
it's in the shadow of Barbie, technically. And that's why it's kind of avoiding that a little bit this year.
I understand that it can avoid it because it's not really an industry product so much as Barbie is, right? Oppenheimer wasn't supposed to do well.
No, it wasn't. And that's part of the reason why it is more embraced. Those have been the three opinions I've heard the most.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it did fall off. It reminds me of A Star is Born.
Yeah.
Early on, we all thought A Star is Born was going to win 4 Oscars or something like that.
Yeah.
And in the end, it just won song.
Yeah, it's just not like sustaining the way that some other movies do. Like Oppenheimer clearly is sustaining Everything Everywhere. Parasite, they had no problem.
It needs
sustaining.
a win that it's consistently getting, and it's not even consistently getting production design.
It's not even getting guild wins. Like it's just not. So I actually think that number 2 in this category is Oppenheimer, and I think it's a little strange that American Fiction is just sweeping when the movie that is going to win 8 Oscars probably is right there. And then American Fiction, which is like, maybe not even in the top 5, is like beating it in this one category.
The
and I
fact
kind of
that
get
it's
it.
strange makes me think.
No, I
gonna
agree
be
with you,
American
but I
Fiction.
think that it's possible that it's so close that we could see just enough Oppenheimer votes,
But at BAFTA, right? So at BAFTA, you could say maybe it was close, maybe Oppenheimer had a few less votes, but like American Fiction, they didn't even like it. It didn't show up in their Best Picture 10.
It's the only nomination that it had.
Only a nomination that it has. And the Oscars over-nominated the movie, so the Oscars love American Fiction.
Right.
It should perform better than it did at BAFTA. So on that alone, you have to imagine it's going to take Screenplay easily, almost.
I mean, I think
But
I don't want to say easily, but by the logic, it's that it should take it easily.
also won Indie Spirit and USC, so it just seems like it's steamrolling, and everybody just knows.
And it's like one category where you can vote for something other than Oppenheimer when Oppenheimer is going to go down your ballot.
I do understand too that American Fiction has its detractors, because I've talked to so many people who feel the satire and the family drama is not blended well. I also have heard people say it's not as scathing in its satire, like it's kind of toothless really, and it's just like more conventional. Well, you know what? That conventionality really sells to a broad audience. They'll say it may not be the most perfect screenplay, but it's like they appreciated that it was trying to do something and bring to light certain issues.
Right.
Another factor to consider is Cord Jefferson has been a really, really good campaigner this season. Nolan, he's got director sewn up, he's got picture sewn up. He doesn't technically need this.
There are a lot of years like Everything Everywhere and Birdman where you could have just said well, we know that they're getting director.
But they had precursors, though. That's
I know. No, I'm
That's
not.
the only
I
thing.
can't predict Oppenheimer without precursors because I just don't. I wouldn't be able to understand why. But I would argue that it's closer. And I also I would just say in general, I think it's a little odd that because I have seen a lot of what you're saying about people who feel a little mixed on certain aspects of American Fiction.
Yeah.
That the movie that's far and away the front runner is losing to it. But I have to go with the fact that is happening.
It is weird. I'm not gonna lie. It is very weird that Oppenheimer can be sweeping this much, but the screenplay is not coming along with it. It reminds me a little bit of Guillermo del Toro with The Shape of Water.
When you're a director lock and your movie is seen as more of a visual masterpiece, I think that happens.
I think ultimately what it is that the feeling of a screenplay winner is often satire, comedy, wit. And also, saying something that feels fresh and original, which is definitely American Fiction.
And let's not forget, too, it's about a writer. And how many writers are there in Hollywood who are like, oh, God, I get it,
Yeah.
So
Cinematography, we saw what happened at ASC, we saw what happened at BAFTA. There's really nothing else to say.
Clean sweep.
Congrats, Hoyt von Hoytema, on your first Oscar.
Yep.
Best editing. Once again, congratulations to Jennifer Lame on her first Oscar.
Not lame.
Oppenheimer is an amazing feat of editing, I think. I feel like Jennifer Lame with Hereditary, Marriage Story, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing editing in all those movies. Completely such a versatile editor.
I rewatched Tenet in the re-release. She edited Tenet, and it's that movie is so still confusing to me at times. Her editing in that movie is amazing. Jennifer Lame, richly deserved. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Once again, Hoyt van Hoytema, clean sweep.
I like to talk about production design and costumes kind of in the same breath.
Let's get into it.
Well, it is the same, isn't it?
Well, it depends. Not everybody thinks it's the same.
The race is between two movies.
The race is between the same two movies.
But would anyone here dare to split it?
I was thinking
would
about
you
it for a
consider
long
splitting?
time.
I would consider it.
I have a lot of things to say about this because this is the one that I've literally, it's been keeping me up at night.
Yeah.
Because
Me too.
for a while, I had the theory that Barbie is going to win, Critics' Choice, Production Design Costumes, and then Poor Thing is going to win Production Design Costumes, and then everyone's going to go with Poor Things the way that they tried to do with Elvis last year. And it's not going to work, and it's going to be Barbie, just like how Black Panther beat The Favorite. I had it all planned out in my mind that that's how it would go. But then Poor Things beating it at ADG, it becomes very hard to justify, because I will say this, and I have some fun stats here. Shush, I have some fun stats. Wait for the stats. Critics' Choice is actually very fucking good at predicting production design costumes.
Yes, they are.
Especially production design. And I'll say that every time that Critics' Choice has been right and BAFTA's been wrong, it went to the Critics' Choice winner. But in all of those instances, those films also won Art Directors Guild.
Yes.
So this is
We're in unprecedented territory.
we're in the void. We're in the dark. Yeah. We don't know what's going on. We can't find the light switch. Imagine Rudolph Haas in his house in the dark and there's no light around him.
I would prefer not to think about that family.
And again, I'll reuse the argument that I said in Screenplay. Barbie, it just is not as strong as Poor Things, and it does seem to be slipping a bit. However, I think that Barbie has an advantage with the Oscars, maybe even over BAFTA and Art Directors Guild, in that just to the normie, to the pleb out there who just is like an average little like industry voter, Barbie's campaign for production design year long was insane. Everybody was like obsessed with just how they built that dazzling set. There's a like walkthrough on YouTube from Vanity Fair or something that has millions of views taking you around the set. It just seems like such a no-brainer in many ways. But also, Poor Things is the favorite. I've seen enough videos of Poor Things where I was like, I actually would vote for this over Barbie, and I thought Barbie was just incredible.
I think production design is easier than costumes. I think production design is going to go to Poor Things, and I have a couple of reasons behind this. One definitely is the Art Directors Guild win over Barbie. That was huge. Yeah. The fact that they weren't in different categories and it beat it there. Same thing happened at BAFTA. CCA, yes, did go with Barbie, but that was also in a time in the race where Barbie did seem to have more momentum.
Yeah, that was when Barbie was what we thought it was.
Right, exactly.
When considering momentum, it all changes for me.
I think what happened here, though, the stuff in Barbie Land is, to your point, amazing. It is jaw-dropping. It is so eye-catching. The problem is that that's not the whole movie. Poor Things, the whole movie from beginning to end is jaw-dropping, dazzling production design. You also have, with Barbie, recreations of sets that are already based on pre-existing properties. Mm-hmm. Poor Things is 100% imagination. That is something that I think we've seen, the industry respond to more here. Last year, we all, I think, predicted Elvis and maybe Banshees would win something, and they ended up walking away with nothing in the end, which was kind of shocking in retrospect, right? So now this year, I think we're in a position where Barbie's going to win something. Barbie's winning song. Poor Things legitimately could go home empty-handed if it were to lose both of these to Barbie.
With 11 nominations, it's a bit tough to swallow, though.
Understandable, right? So
but it's not tough to swallow 10.
Well, it's happened less. I mean, it has happened.
Like that
11.
one nomination threshold, means. Something
I think Poor Things is I think it's really like having a good moment. It's really up there for picture.
Yeah. I mean, it's also surging right now, during voting. It's doing well at the box office. More voters were catching up with it at the most opportune time. I do believe that Poor Things is more beloved within the Academy than The Favorite was. To say that it is going to either get just one Oscar or 0 is something that just doesn't make sense to me in terms of its trajectory when I compare it to the performance of The Favorite. I do think it's going to win at minimum 2. I've heard a lot of people bring up The Favorite Black Panther year versus this. I get it. I understand the reasons why you would bring it up. Black Panther had the Wakanda stuff, and that's kind of equivalent to Barbie Land. And then when they go to Planet Earth, it's that same argument.
And also
right?
it just being a big blockbuster, American kind of iconic thing.
Making a lot of money. Exactly.
I don't think the fantasy versus the period, although Poor Things is not really period.
Exactly. That's a huge, huge difference.
That's the big difference.
The Favorite shot in locations that were pre-existing that didn't have much done to them to change them up so much. And this, you can't say that about Poor Things.
No.
So
they built all that shit.
Right.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. I do think that more people watch Poor Things and say, oh my God, like that's, you know, like a design feat, you know, like that is an achievement.
Yeah, that's
design.
what I said when I watched it. I thought, you know, compared to Barbie, like I'm one of the people who would say that Poor Things was more impressive because they had to like dig into their imagination and like pull from many different influences to create something that we haven't quite seen before. And when I watched the film, that was my reaction. Like, I have not seen this before. I don't know what world I'm in, but it is amazing. And it also felt like it matched the story it was telling and the character's inner journey. Like, it was just incredible. After seeing Barbie, it was going to take an enormous achievement to trump that at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Like, that really seemed like it had a production design win going into the Oscars. And it would only take a movie like Poor Things to, you know, steal it.
I remember I felt that way as soon as I saw Poor Things. As soon as I walked out of the theater, I was like, well, there goes the costume and production design wins for Barbie. I do think it is tough, though, because to Cole's point, you know, Barbie's design was a huge talking point this year. Huge. It was a cultural phenomenon.
It's also just more of a talking point for regular people.
Yeah.
In the same way that like bright YouTube thumbnails attract people to click, like Barbie's is brighter. Like that shit hits you in the face with the pink. I mean, I think there's something to that. Now, also, I generally think that what we've seen is that with critics groups, production design was more of a runaway for Barbie than costumes versus Poor Things. Even in the few anonymous ballots, it's been closer there by far than it has been in costumes. Part of me thinks that even though, like, I understand some of the arguments for why costumes might be closer, I actually think that maybe production design is the closer race. But I think I will go with Poor Things. My gut kind of wants me to watch out for Barbie, but I feel like there's a momentum problem with Barbie ultimately.
Yeah.
And in addition, production design, when compared to costumes, is a category that is more likely to go to a big Best Picture film. Costumes can go with, like, you know, Cruella or whatever. Production design would never do such a thing. But even last year, Babylon losing to All Quiet.
Going to costumes, though, like, that is tough.
I've always felt this way just because the costumes in Barbie were more stunning. And in Poor Things, my attention was mostly taken by the production design. It felt like the costumes were secondary in like level of achievement. But Barbie, it felt like costumes and production design were both, you know, equally impressive. Barbie literally throws the costumes in your face.
That's the thing, is that it's
frame.
literally like a fashion show on
Yeah,
display.
it's a fashion show, yeah.
But Barbie's a bit less conventional of a winner because I think Poor Things has a little bit more period flavor, whereas Barbie is a little bit more like fantasy. And period flavor does better in costumes, whereas I think fantasy flavor does better in production design.
But there are like these like weird tweaks to the Poor Things costumes that are in some cases period accurate and in other cases not, to just kind of like give it like that slightly off kilter feel to it. Oh, man, I've agonized over this. I'm not kidding.
But even that thing that you just said, most people might not notice that.
No, they don't. What they do notice, they notice the colors, they notice the shape.
Colors, shapes.
Yeah. I do think like Bella's like glasses that she wears when she goes outside and she's looking up at the sun and stuff. She's got the yellow, the white, and the blue and everything.
She got big ass sleeves too.
Yeah. The main thing I think of with the costumes is just like she has huge puffy sleeves.
With the long black hair, like it's an iconic look in
Yeah,
a lot
it
of ways.
is.
Like to me that feels like a Halloween costume almost.
Yeah.
Well, we all know what won the Halloween costume award this year.
Understandable, but I am trying to think of also just looks that would stand out to voters.
Yeah.
But I think with Barbie, it's a case of more is, more.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if that
the most
is
costumes, as
right.
people say.
I think that's the factor. Maybe I think that's why I'm leaning towards it. But I remember even when I did my own predictions podcast, I was tempted to hedge my bets and do Barbie for costumes and Poor Things for production design, because it's like I know that with that split, I know I'm getting one right.
I still think that there is the split the other way is possible.
You do?
Wait, that would be like the 1917 Ford v Ferrari when they were both competing in sound categories.
I need to dig into this.
wrong.
You're telling me that the BAFTA ADG combo of production design is not stronger in your mind than just a lone CCA win?
Last year, Black Panther won costumes with only CCA. I think sometimes CCA maybe serves as a good pull for like what people who are not necessarily like experts in this craft and live in America think. whereas the others can't be that.
Okay, let me ask you this question then. How did you justify the Wakanda Forever win when it did happen? What was the thing in your mind that said, okay,
so
this is why I won?
This is it.
Not CCA.
My brain went, well, of course, like, that's what I would have voted for, because those were the flashiest costumes.
More.
Flashier.
More.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's more.
Barbie has
I think Barbie's
more.
more.
You think Barbie's more?
Yeah.
I remember like a lot of the costumes when I just think about it. But this is a very subjective thing.
It's not just Barbie and Ken. It's all these other actors and characters that they have in all these different outfits.
And they're on the beach and they're dancing. And
well, then again, you may be predicting Poor Things for a lone production design win, right?
Which is why I'm not doing it. I'm predicting it to take both because I can't because I can't justify in my mind. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. It doesn't make sense to me to only have Poor Things win just one Oscar, and for that to be production design. Yeah. That's also like weird.
It's
the
weird.
last lone production design winner was Sweeney Todd.
That's why now you have to do 3D chess and you have to make Emma Stone win.
Well, once again, that's possible, right?
Yeah.
So that might debunk my theory here too, which is why I'm going to recommend to people that if you want to like win your Oscar pool and you want to just play it safe, the safe bet, I think, is Barbie for costumes and Poor Things for production design. Let's not forget, like, pretty much all of the country dressed up in pink this summer because of Barbie. Like I said, you can't deny that the momentum has shifted.
It does feel like that,
Yeah, but at the same time, to your point about Wakanda Forever last year, like, we did not consider that at a certain point. We thought all the momentum was with Elvis at that point in the season. Pretend it was your parents, and you just sat them down and you told them, hey, watch both of these movies. Now tell me which one you think had the better costumes.
I might say Barbie.
I'll tell you this.
I think I know.
I'll tell you this. My parents would have said Barbie probably.
Yeah.
That's just like an instinctual,
it's instinctual.
layman's terms, like kind of reaction to it.
Yeah.
This is why I think the smart choice is to do the split of Barbie in costumes and Poor Things in production design. And I'm telling you, I think you're going to get at least one right. The other way, Cole, the reason why I disagree with you on this is because Poor Things beat Barbie in direct competition at both BAFTA and at Art Directors Guild.
It might have beat Barbie if they were in the same category Costume Guild too. Like, I think that might have happened.
And that's why I'm predicting Poor Things to take both.
I'm very convinced by Barbie in costumes, even though I think it would be strange for Poor Things and Barbie to split. And I imagine if you're on your ballot, then you're just going to check both off as like kind of a unit. But instinctually, the Barbie costumes are more burned into your brain than the Poor Things ones.
I think La La Land is such a good rule for this to look at. It winning production design, but not costumes. It was a Best Picture nominee. It lost to a non-Best Picture nominee. Like, that should not have happened. And then, like, last year, too, a lot of us thought Elvis was going to win costumes. And then it lost to a non-Best Picture nominee. Now, it did have that CCA win. Barbie does have those CCA wins. I get it. CCA does not have any voting power within the Academy. It doesn't matter. It's all about perception. And I think at one time the perception was Barbie is going to win at CCA and it's going to continue to win, right? Because that was where the momentum was.
Yeah.
Perception and momentum go hand in hand with each other. And I think we're at a point now where the momentum is shifted. And now the perception has also shifted. And I don't think that you can just rely on the CCA win alone to carry you over there.
Also, the only time that BAFTA was right when Critics' Choice were wrong was when Critics' Choice gave it to Dolomite and it wasn't even nominated for the Oscar, so it just had to go to Little Women.
Do you think there is a world where Poor Things legitimately does not win a single award it's nominated for?
Yeah, I think there's a world. I think Barbie could take both.
It's weird at this point. I don't think it's going to happen at this point, given that it won a bunch of... Well, Elvis won a bunch of BAFTAs, too.
I think with its nomination count being what it is, I would find it very unlikely that Poor Things walks away empty-handed.
Yeah, it'd be weird.
And you know what? Maybe this is the favorite all over again, and maybe we're all wrong about actress. Like, maybe it loses everything throughout the night, and we're like, there's no way it's going
that's
over
going to keep
11.
me on the edge. If it loses them all, I'm going to be like, is this really going to happen again?
Well, you know what's going to be interesting? If Poor Things wins production design costumes, and we get to actress, Poor Things going to have 2 Oscars, and Killers of the Flower Moon is not going to have any, and we're going to be feeling the tension even more.
Yeah.
Thinking more about this category, I think it's just unwise to say Critics' Choice didn't predict both costumes and production design, because that's never happened. So many years, my lesson to myself is to trust the Critics' Choice to some extent, and I could see Barbie taking both production design costumes. Barbie, I also just think blends in with the winners of the category a little more, just on an instinctual level, like looking at the winners. And they care less in costumes, as we see time and time again, about whether or not they love the movie. Obviously, they do like Barbie, but I don't think that the Poor Things shift in momentum applies as much to this category.
And there's another category that Poor Things is competitive in, too.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Makeup. I actually I'm not confused about this category, and I know a lot of people are. I understand that Poor Things seems like it's doing pretty well here. And I also saw that, it actually does seem to be getting some of these votes in the anonymous ballots. It has more than Maestro, but this is not going to sway me. I always thought that Maestro just makes sense to win because it just fits the brand of the makeup winner. When you have lead actors who are just completely fully in prosthetics that transform them, there's just nothing you can do about it. BAFTA going for Poor Things, big deal. As I said in the predictions, Vice fucking lost to The Favorite, so that doesn't matter to me.
And then The Whale lost to Elvis last year.
Yeah, and then what happened last year at the Makeup Guild? They went with The Whale. The Makeup Guild gave it to the Maestro. They came through for Maestro. What's happening?
If makeup doesn't sing in you, darling, then nothing sings in you. No, it's going to be Maestro. What I did with this is, instead of looking at reasons why Maestro would win, I instead decided to look at reasons why Maestro won't win. And what I came up with was this. People don't like the movie, but the Academy does.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think people are letting their biasness against the movie get in the way of them predicting this. The other two reasons why Maestro might not win is because this idea of, we're doing this again?
Yeah.
Actor doused in makeup, old age prosthetics again. Some people think this is the year where they're going to just stop doing it. And the third reason why people think that Maestro is not going to win this category is because of momentum.
No one's good at perceiving the momentum for Maestro.
That's the thing, is that every time people thought this is dead in the water, this is not happening, this is not even a good movie, it would still get these nominations that made people go, what? Why? It overperformed at BAFTA. It got in where it needed to here at the Academy.
Yep.
And I remember when it lost makeup to Poor Things at BAFTA, so many people were like, that's it! It's over! The race is done!
No.
Later on that evening, it won at the Makeup Guild then over Poor Things. It directly beat it. Another thing too about the Makeup and Hairstylist Guild, they have been around that long, only since 2013. But other than the Tammy Faye year, every single Oscar winner has won an award from that guild since 2013. And in the Tammy Faye year, I think the only winner that was an Oscar nominee in that category was Coming to America. But Tammy Faye at least had CCA and BAFTA to kind of combat that. And Tammy Faye's win was tied to an Oscar-winning performance. Bradley Cooper may not be winning the Oscar, but he's nominated. And it's
Carey
a
Mulligan's
transformative
age, too.
Yeah, it's not just Bradley.
People will say Emma Stone, and it's that's not where the makeup is. That's not why the movie's nominated. It's for Willem Dafoe.
I think the fact that Maestro opens, even if people started watching and they turned it off halfway through, they saw Bradley in the opening couple of moments in close-up with that makeup. And I gotta say, too, love it or hate the film, no matter what you think about it, that's some of the best goddamn old-age makeup I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Kazuhiro, who has previously won for Darkest Hour and also for Bombshell, he's doing just this incredible work on people, transforming them in ways that, quite frankly, feels like it should be impossible.
Yeah. I'm also more convinced that Maestro's winning. It just feels like the movie that was going to win all year, and I felt disappointed that I gave up on predicting The Whale last year over Elvis. And it's kind of like my redemption thing where I'm not going to go against Maestro, feeling that it's obviously going to win.
If Poor Things does win, it is a sign that they like that movie more than Maestro.
But that rarely plays out in the makeup.
That's why. Yeah.
What is Suicide Squad doing winning the award?
I agree with you. That's why I'm going.
Maestro has actor, actress, picture, screenplay. It's not really a weak movie.
For sound, this is clearly Oppenheimer versus Zone of Interest. What are you doing? What are you being sad about?
I know you're a big fan of Zone of Interest. That's
No. You didn't watch the video with the film drunk where I said that I would vote for Oppenheimer.
Oh, really?
In sound.
The Zone of Interest has amazing sound work, but I think it's more interesting in the formal sense, the overall vision for what the sound is in the film. Zone of Interest has some of the most interesting use of sound I've ever seen in a movie, and I think that's why it's competitive for the win. But I think it winning at BAFTA, it's pretty easy to say, well, look, they went out for that movie in way more text than the Oscars did, and it was British, and they had a massive hard-on for it. It beat Poor Things in British film.
Yeah.
I mean, the Oscars like the Zone of Interest too, and I've seen on anonymous ballots, it's actually doing pretty goddamn well. Some people are really big Zone of Interest fans.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so it could upset, but who do they like more? They like Oppenheimer more, and that makes an enormous amount of sense for sound.
Yeah.
And it also is going to win editing, and Zone of Interest isn't nominated in editing.
Yeah.
So, you put all these things together,
That's the big one.
I can make a case that it's close, but I don't think that it's gonna.
That to me is the biggest stat of all, is the corresponding film editing nomination.
Yeah, after Sound of Metal, I think that's absolutely real.
Zone 1 here, one of the coolest wins ever. Like, I would be so happy and so impressed by it. But that's not to say I'm not happy about Oppenheimer winning. This is a very, very deserving win. Because it won MPSE, it won CAS. It didn't win BAFTA, but Zone of Interest didn't win last night with MPSE over Society of the Snow.
Yeah. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Society of the Snow should have been nominated. Totally.
100%
Yeah.
agreed.
I think I was more impressed with Oppenheimer's sound, and Zone of Interest, I love like the creative use of sound. They're two different things, but even like loving Zone of Interest more than Oppenheimer, I can't really put them up against each other and say that like, oh, Zone of Interest, I want that to win because that's my movie. Like, the sound from Oppenheimer was so impressive and impactful for me.
I think with Zone of Interest, like, it's more of a reflection of Glazer's vision as a director for that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I did hear a little bit about how the person who did the sound like went out and did a lot of field recordings and picked up like a ton of audio and came up with a storyline and all of this stuff. I mean, it is really impressive technically as well.
But with Oppenheimer, I think what you remember is those particular moments where the sound just blasted you in the face.
I remember the sound in like the bleacher scene too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just booms. It's like
It was creative, you know?
Yeah, and I could hear the dialogue this time around in the Christopher Nolan film.
no complaints about that.
I actually couldn't hear what they were saying though in the background of Zone of Interest, which frustrated me.
And the way it's mixed with the score, I think was pretty great too. We can get to that category as well. We all know that Ludwig is coming for number 2.
Score is done, and this is great. I love it.
This is an all-timer score.
The whole time since I saw the movie, and I agree that it's an all-timer. It's
Everybody already
my
knows
favorite
it.
of the year.
TikTok already did it. It's done. Like,
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
So impressive.
Absolutely
There's
everywhere.
no more impressive score. I know that some people love the Spider-Verse score, but even still, it's just I don't think it's more impressive.
I would have liked to have seen Spider-Verse get nominated. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Oppenheimer is, like I said, it's an all-timer score. To me, it's like what the category was made for.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no challengers. There's not even a number 2.
Well, Indiana Jones. I mean, that's the he's never going to get to score another one. So the narrative for John Williams is really taking off. Buckle up, everybody. Let's do visual effects.
Oh, no.
Oh man.
Oh, God.
I want to talk about Napoleon first.
Yeah, I think we need to decide whether Napoleon's part of the conversation or not.
It is.
I think it is not. I think it is not possible. The argument that Napoleon is part of the conversation is because of the other nominations it has, and I understand. I know all
Including
about
production
I know
design.
all about it.
All right,
I looked
all
at
right.
it.
You brought so much awareness to this, by the way. Like, that one tweet alone about the correlation with production design got so many people to predict it.
I know.
But after BAFTA, a lot of people
Not
were
just BAFTA, but
backing
VES is what made me back off.
But
Yeah,
and the
VES,
reason
yeah.
it's not winning those is because I don't think that Napoleon is like perceived as having the most impressive visual effects, nor is it the type of movie that wins. And I see people saying it has an aura of prestige, which makes it the kind of thing that wins. But really, I don't think historical epics win the category a lot outside of 1917, which had a very unique narrative and a story to the visual effects. Napoleon creating these epic battle scenes, it just isn't a typical winner. And I also think it matters if people like the thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, it's been respected. Like, it got a handful of nominations here and at BAFTA, but people feel mixed about the movie.
Yeah.
I just don't think that I see anybody genuinely making the case that it had the most impressive visual effects in the category.
Here's what I'm going to give you. I don't think it's completely out, but it is number 3 for me in the category.
I can put it at number 3.
Yeah,
I'm pretty firmly
Number 3 is
between
fine.
two movies.
I from a stat standpoint, that production design nomination scares the shit out of me. And I'm telling you right now, we already talked about this on my podcast. If it does win, I will never go against the production design stat ever again. But it losing at both BAFTA and at VES is something that I cannot ignore.
Yeah.
It's a very divisive film.
and with audiences too, not just critics.
Absolutely. So this race to me is between Creator and Godzilla -1.
I think the production design stat, maybe it's one of those coincidental stats. I mean, it speaks to that the movie is resonating with another branch on some level, but I think it also speaks to the type of movie that it is. Like, and a visual effects winner often, expensive fantasy, sci-fi gets the award. This is not that, but the flavor of movie that wins visual effects, I think there's one movie that matches up the best with it, and it's The Creator, in that they like space movies, they like their science fiction.
Sure.
And like, even with the Apes movies, which they all win VES, I think, and they all lose the Oscar to science fiction films. Like,
Sure.
you see Ex Machina, Interstellar, Tenet,
Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, Blade Runner 2049. Like, there's plenty of examples. This is the type of thing that wins. But I do think it's obviously an obstacle that the movie was not just a box office flop, but not that well liked overall. I mean, the narrative caught on. People understand that the visual effects did a lot with a little budget, and that this is very rare to see in Hollywood right now. So, I mean, so did Godzilla -1, just not in Hollywood.
To me, this is the toughest race of the night.
I think even the betting odds markets have it at even.
If I'm looking at this piece by piece by piece, Godzilla -1 has a narrative too, like you said, of costing X amount of money. Look what they were able to achieve with that, right? Another plus to keep in mind is that people like the movie more.
And the director gets the award too.
Yep.
I think it's cool that he worked directly with the visual.
First time since Stanley Kubrick in 2001.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah. So pretty cool stuff there all around. But I think that is where the positives do end for Godzilla -1, because it doesn't have a single precursor win heading into this ceremony. The creator has VES, but now you could say, well, that's visual effects artists voting for visual effects.
I thought that was obviously going to happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
They weren't going to go for Oppenheimer. Godzilla -1 wasn't nominated in the category. It was a little surprising to me that Godzilla -1 did lose the one category it was nominated for, mind you, to Guardians of the Galaxy, of all things.
That's not that surprising. I mean, the raccoon, like, that's like almost the whole
It's
thing,
it's most impressive use of Rocket Raccoon in the 3 movies, of course. But I'll believe a Marvel film winning in this category until I see it. Creator has that narrative behind it, as we were saying before. In terms of like the type of film that does win, I heard you saying that and comparing it to winners, and that logic did make sense to me. But then I did also think about VES's spotty track record with their winners repeating at Oscar. So it's like, yeah, it is a type of film that would win, but if it was a more well-received film that was a box office hit, I would be agreeing with you. I think what this might just come down to at the end of the day, and I've talked to enough voters who have said this. One voter in particular said to me, I was going to vote a different way in this category until I watched Godzilla -1. And I think that that's the thing to consider here, is that when you have films like Napoleon and Creator that are split in terms of people's overall feelings towards them as movies, as a movie-going experience, and what movie they just enjoyed more, Godzilla -1 is a damn good genre monster movie, you know, and that is a knock against it too, is like, you know, people might look at it and go, oh, it's a genre that is, you know, beneath the snobby Academy voter. But no, Godzilla -1's like really, really good for what it's setting out to do. Take out feelings about the movie itself, okay? How many voters do you think are watching these movies and actually judging the visual effects outside of the movie?
Well, clearly with BAFTA, it was evident that they were voting based on the movie that they liked.
Right.
So that was a big tell, I think.
Yeah.
To see how a visual effects branch would vote for it versus...
And Critics' Choice did the same thing when they gave it to Oppenheimer. I think that this year demonstrates the discrepancy that there is
But
between...
Critics' Choice are less like...
You know,
I
what
think
everybody would vote
BAFTA's
for
more
versus what the branch would vote for, which is why I think VES may be, you know, the only one that gave a precursor to something nominated, but at the same time, of course they did.
Right, because that's what I was getting at, was I do think when you really look at all the nominees side by side against each other and you look at just the visual effects outside of the context of the movie, the creator, I think, does have the best visual effects actually amongst the nominees.
And I think the other thing is, I think that most people would say that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I understand that people want to vote for Godzilla -1 because it's like this sort of underdog film from Japan. We can get it like an Oscar win. That'd be so cool because I love that movie.
Reminds me of a little movie called RRR, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does feel like that.
And that's why I'm officially going with Godzilla -1. I think it's the
wow.
movie that voters, if they watch it, that's the key, is if they watch it.
And we don't know.
I think if they watch it, it wins.
Well, you know what? It made
Very
more money than the
possible.
creator domestically.
Yeah, I mean, are people even watching the creator? On that
Do you
same
have to,
note?
though?
I mean, I'm not even convinced that people have seen the creator.
Yeah, but if I watched a VFX reel, like just that alone, I'd probably go with like the creator.
I also think too the Godzilla -1 like campaign, maybe not so much the campaign, but let's just say the momentum, like the narrative momentum for it, really started to take off at the right time when voting was taking place. I'm going with Godzilla -1 because I do think that even up against things like Guardians, Mission Impossible, which did get high critic scores, Godzilla -1 is to me the film that if you ask most people, they would say that's the movie that they like the most in the category.
I mean, if it is a Best Picture race, if that's truly what we're talking about here, and I feel like that is actually a good way to go off of it, then Godzilla -1 wins the Best Picture race. And then I have to question, well, which of them have they seen? Because none of these are Best Picture nominees, so there's a good chance they haven't seen any of them. Even that one, it's kind of a coin toss, kind of a tiebreaker between Godzilla and the creator in terms of what they've seen.
I think you do need to consider the fact that Creator and Napoleon have additional nominations.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that means then that...
And Sound Branch is big.
Yeah.
So
that means that more people in the Academy will watch it because it's a nominee in their group.
They don't usually go for like, a monster movie that has like, disaster movie element. Like it just doesn't fit. But I get that there's a passion argument there. When it comes to, everybody in the Academy having a vote, I get why they would be compelled to do that. And it doesn't matter to me that it didn't really get a ton of precursors.
Do you think that in a way, though, this is sort of similar to what Ex Machina did in 2015? It was two things. Look at what they achieved with so little, which is exactly what Creator and Godzilla have done here. Mm-hmm. Godzilla even more so. And then the second thing, and this is debatable, I think, but a lot of people did cite, well, I just liked Ex Machina.
Two of them were nominated for Best Picture. Ex Machina wasn't. So how could they like it more? Or were they just like...
That's a case, I think, of voters catching up with it a little too late.
Yeah, right.
And that's how I feel about Godzilla, though, in this case, is I do think that Godzilla is the kind of movie where voters have maybe hopefully now caught up with it at this point.
Yeah. I might go with Godzilla also.
Gold Derby's doing Godzilla.
You know what's the one year I could compare this to maybe a little bit? Is the Avengers versus First Man. Because there were no Best Picture nominees in that category either. And First Man was the one that most felt like a Best Picture winner.
It did.
And it had additional nominations, including production design.
Yeah, but then you'd be arguing Napoleon.
I would,
but people liked First Man.
Exactly.
I mean, Creator got sound, which was a surprise. Right? You can say that production design is a big step, but so does sound. Sound is like really correlative.
I think that's a good argument to make for why you would go with Creator.
I'm gonna go with the Creator for now, but I could change. And mostly, it's because when I look at the winners, I think it blends in with what wins the best.
I've decided to go with Godzilla -1. It didn't win any precursors, but the precursors taught us. At the Critics' Choice and the BAFTA, they voted for their favorite movie. VES was always going to go with the Creator because they are looking deeper at the movies than the Oscars do. Maybe Godzilla -1 is an online internet thing that we're not recognizing, but it did make more money than the Creator. I think the argument that it wins the category because it's the most liked movie is pretty good.
I'll just stick with Godzilla -1, and my main reasoning is that the BAFTAs went with Poor Things. They didn't give a shit about the visual effects. It plays in my brain better hearing them say the Creator.
It does?
Yeah, it's weird. Them being like the Creator, and we're like, yeah.
I'm also weary that Godzilla -1, people thinking that it's going to win, is a bit of an internet thing.
Right. That's what we're going to say if it doesn't win.
All right, I'll stick with the Creator, but I'm so fucking tempted. So song... We know that Barbie is going to win. I was saying I'm Just Ken for a while. I thought that, people would go for the song that's has the big performance in the movie. But I backed down. I mean, that movie won Song of the Year at the Grammys. Competing with every song that came out that year. What Was I Made For won. It just seems to be going that way.
Won the Golden Globe, which was important.
Yeah, Critics' Choice gave it to I'm Just Ken, but, of course they did, I guess. I think the Billie Eilish one, I mean, that plays like all the... that just is the most... in the culture.
I hear it in Uber cars.
Oh yeah.
It's everywhere. I go to department stores, it's playing.
Yeah.
I go to my doctor,
especially
and it's playing. It's everywhere. The Grammys also helped a lot, I think.
It's also the cry song. Maybe crying triumphs over fun.
I did hear one voter tell me that they couldn't remember exactly when that song was played during Barbie. And I was like, I had the same reaction, but then they did say, but man, that musical number with Ken, that really stood out. And you know what? It does. I understand why people get excited by it. It plays at a point in the movie that's very memorable. Here's the thing, though. That's not fitting with previous winners in this category.
Yeah.
The Billie Eilish one definitely is.
Except for RRR, but that was a weird one in general.
But I also think, too, Billie Eilish is just super popular. I think if Ryan Gosling was nominated for this, there could have been a more compelling argument to be like, let's get Ryan Gosling an Oscar. And you know what? I'm going to enjoy the shit out of watching Ryan Gosling perform. I'm Just Kidding.
Yeah, that's what we should be grateful for at the end of the day. International feature, we don't need to discuss every year that there's a nominee in this category that's in Best Picture. It goes to that, and that's the Zone of Interest.
I think Jonathan Glazer should thank France in his speech.
Yeah. I actually don't know what would have won. I actually don't know.
No, I still think it would have been
Anatomy was
Anatomy.
there.
I think it would have been Anatomy.
But Zone's really popping off. Like,
Well,
a
that
lot
was-
of people
that
think
was
it's the
BAFTAs.
number one of the year.
But Anatomy's winning screenplay.
It is. Yeah.
I think it's an amazing Best Picture nominee, an amazing winner in this category. Like, to me, it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece that's going to be taught in film schools, and I think that it's going to have such an enduring legacy.
Animated feature is actually a little interesting,
yeah.
but
I want to hear. Are you guys gonna?
he made his. I like his argument.
For background, we have Boy and the Heron that won Globe and BAFTA, which is a great combo. Apparently, it's never lost.
Nope.
But neither has Spider-Verse's combo of PGA, Critics' Choice, and...
Literally everything else is all you need to say.
Yeah, we're talking about like the Eddie Guild, like every guild that gives awards to animated movies, and the Annie. I just look at like what typically wins in the category. Right, like remember Toy Story 4 when people thought Klaus was gonna win, or like when or Missing Link because it won the Golden Globe. Toy Story 4 won. Generally in this category, they go pretty mainstream. They'll go with the very popular movie that was very acclaimed. I don't think they have a problem giving it to Spider-Verse again. They gave every single Toy Story, the award. It makes a little bit more sense to me that the BAFTAs and the Globes, which are very international. I mean, they are international. They were the ones to go with Heron, and all the American guilds and stuff have been going with Spider-Verse.
I don't think this is a slam dunk for Spider-Verse. One of the knocks against it is that Toy Story is the only franchise that has won the Oscar for its sequels. Otherwise, this group in general is not about rewarding sequels.
How many sequels have been as good or have lived up that much that have shown up in the category?
I agree with you on that too. I think Across Spider-Verse is even better than the first film in my opinion.
Yeah, most people seem to think it. It got shortlisted for categories that you wouldn't have fathomed the first one too.
I think it's a staggering achievement of animation, storytelling. I was blown away by it.
Yeah.
I think it's an extremely deserving winner in the category. However, Miyazaki, he is like on the level of like a Martin Scorsese, like even some people would say even beyond. There is a compelling argument to make of those who are devoted on that level to him and just going for him. But on a broad enough level with this many voters, which film tends to win? And to your point, it's part of the reason why we do not see the small, like independent foreign film defeat the critically acclaimed mainstream film like Flea versus Encanto, as one example.
The only time it happened was Spirited Away versus Monsters Inc. And Spirited Away is like arguably like the best animated film.
The first Spider-Verse beating Incredibles 2 was also considered a little bit of that like underdog.
Yeah, but that movie was
that's not
exploding at the
quite
time.
as much. It's not like
I think
a 2D
that was
animated
definitely
film.
an underdog story in the sense of like we're going up against the Mouse House here, who
Absolutely,
typically win this category. Here, it's like Spider-Verse is now considered like the mainstay, dominant like figure in this category.
Yeah.
And Boy and the Heron is seen as like kind of the underdog.
Sure.
One thing that's working against Boy and the Heron, in my opinion, I do think that there is enough voters who, when they watch that movie, they walk away from it going, I didn't really quite get like
I
what
hear
it
that
was.
all the time from people. Even like on IMDb, I think it's one of his lowest rated.
There is a world where I could see Boy and the Heron winning this. I really could. But I do have to weigh in the fact that so many people I've spoken to have watched the movie, either didn't understand it, didn't connect with it. They were like, what's up with all the birds, or whatever it is. I'm leaning towards Spider-Verse, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
It really wouldn't
I think
surprise
it's very
me.
close. I'm gonna go with Spider-Verse also.
What's the other thing that hurt Boy and the Heron 2 was when it no longer was perceived as being his final film anymore. When they all came forward and they said, oh no, he's working on another one, it was like, okay, well then...
Yeah,
Never mind. Documentary, I think this is an easy one. 20 Days in Mariupol is winning all the awards. I mean, I guess it's not winning all the awards, but like even at PGA where like American Symphony upsets, like, too bad it's not nominated here. The movie has a very similar narrative to the film that won documentary last year.
It feels like this was never meant to be the winner, and it just like sort of like ended up in this position. But
I never believed that this could win the Oscar.
No.
From when I saw it at Sundance,
I knew it could get
was like-
nominated.
Yeah,
when I saw
I
it.
thought it would maybe get nominated, and that was a maybe at the time. But I was like, there's no way it would win. I mean, are people even going to get through it?
It's a hard watch.
It's a
and
really
that's the only
grueling
knock
watch.
I have against it is I wonder if it's going to be too hard of a watch for some voters and they might go for something else.
But I can see people voting for it just because of what it represents. Like, how many people actually watch all the documentaries,
I agree.
And they're like, I support Ukraine. I know this is about that. what
It's also
about,
ballsy filmmaking, too, that a lot of people respect.
It even won DGA, which is like I don't think it was like even directed. Like, it was just a guy with a camera running around trying not to, like, die and film stuff.
And you know what?
Yeah,
all the
trying not to
respect in
die.
the world to that director for putting his life on the line, you know?
Yeah, true.
If there was going to be an upset, I do think it could come from either Four Daughters, which has some precursors to support the theory. And then Bobby Wine, to me, is the one that, when I watched all 5 nominees, that was the one that, like, played the broadest. 20 Days of Mariupol's just got a lot of stuff in its favor here. So I think that's going to be it.
Now we're on to the short films. These categories I'm also, like, racking my brain over a lot. We can start with documentary short. I think most people agree that it's between 3 films. The ABCs of book banning, which I watched, and I do not like it. It may tackle an issue that's worth tackling, but it doesn't say anything about it that's worth listening to. And it is not well made. There's no momentum to the story. I wrote a whole letterbox thing about why I didn't like this one.
So that's why it's going to win. No.
It could be. It could be.
I'm kidding.
The issue alone is pretty important, especially in the documentary category. That's real. And also the title, there's just a catchiness to it. You know immediately what it's about. Then there's The Last Repair Shop, which I also watched. Amazing.
That would get my vote.
I watched it and I was like, I don't understand how this couldn't win.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to be biased in this category because I really want to say Last Repair Shop's going to win because I just watch it and I'm like, well, yeah, that has everything. And it also tackles a lot of, like, smaller issues. And then there's 99 Waipo, which, you know, Sean Wong is having a really hot streak. He's got a DD at Sundance that just won. And apparently they're campaigning, as people said in your podcast, they're doing a great job. Like, the grandmas are coming around to events and stuff. And the documentary seems charming and palatable. I will say this, though. Here's something that I didn't see mentioned before by other people, is that the documentary winners tend to be long. They haven't awarded something under 20 minutes, I don't know if ever. And 99 Waipo is like 17 minutes. I've heard some people say, well, maybe Last Repair Shop's too long. They will go for 40-minute documentaries in this category. So I don't think that's a problem.
You know why they do that? Because it gives them enough time to highlight the issue that they usually are commenting on. It gives the viewer more of a chance to connect, and it has then the impact that they're seeking to have. I think 99 Waipo, as charming as it is, I do think it is too light. You know, for the reasons that you just said. It's too short to make a substantial impact. Somebody on my podcast mentioned it just feels like a home movie at times. I don't want to, like, come off as being insulting or anything like that to it, but, you know, when I look at the way that the other ones are shot and how they are delivered as far as trying to highlight important topics, whether on a small scale or on a large scale, I do think that has more impact on voters. I don't want to be completely dismissive towards 99 Waipo, because I do think there is a chance that it could prevail here. But at the same time, I had the same thought that you did, which was when I watched Last Repair Shop, I immediately was like, well, that's going to win. It was the most well shot, had the most impactful ending. It was about an issue that, quite frankly, I don't know about because it's so secluded to, like, this community.
And LA, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I wonder how many voters even have any kind of personal ties to it in any way.
It's very emotionally stirring.
Yeah.
The ABCs of book banning may have an important issue, but it can't get the emotion out of it.
God.
I think that there is a real chance that it wins just off of the issue, though, which I'm scared of. But I will say, like, to be fair, though, we do sometimes look at the short films and we say, well, a lot of times the one that, like, sucks wins, that we don't want to happen. But this actually almost always happens in live action short. And if you look at the winners in doc short, they've been pretty highly rated on, like, Letterboxd for, like, the past while. And so I think ABCs of book banning being mixed, I'm going to guess that works against it, although maybe Academy members don't give a shit and they literally just care about the goddamn message.
I can't deny that it's an issue that a lot of people would feel emotionally compelled to want to vote for. If they watch Last Repair Shop, I don't see how they could vote against it. And more often than not, what I've noticed amongst voters is they either abstain and don't watch any of them, and the ones who do vote tend to watch all of them. So I'm going to say Last Repair Shop, and I am going to reserve the worst one is going to win in this category for another one.
I want to talk about the point you just mentioned, but in the context of another category. You don't have anything to say, do you? Live action short. I understand that everybody is very eager and comfortable saying Wes Anderson's going to win. And I get it. And I watched the short and I actually like it. You don't like it, but I actually thought it was good. But I think that if you consider the fact that people who don't see all the short films abstain from voting, I think Red, White, and Blue is almost just a more fitting winner for the category and what they typically go for, in that it like hits you directly with an issue that voters probably care about a lot. Wes Anderson, I don't think he's necessarily always hitting with the Academy. Like, I could see some people being like, yeah, that was a little bit annoying. And I think that if these were feature-length films, Red, White, and Blue would win Best Picture over it. I get that people are kind of going over, they're saying, well, if there's this much star power in a short, then how does that not win? But it's also so rare. Like, there's literally nothing to compare it to, because this never happens, where a big director like this gets in.
I think what it really just comes down to is it really does just come down to voters looking at Wes Anderson and asking themselves, how badly do I want to give this guy an Oscar?
Could people say, well, is this what we give him an Oscar for? Like the short film category?
So, believe it or not, there have actually been a lot of voters who I've spoken to, because this has been around since Venice, so I've had like time to, even before nominations, ask people, hey, hypothetically, if this was nominated, like, would you vote for it? And at the time I heard equal no, because it would be unfair to the other filmmakers who don't have the clout and prestige that Wes is just automatically bringing into it. And then I heard other people say, oh yeah, no, that would be like a great way to like honor him and like, you know, recognize him. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, I mean, it would be a layup. That is the way it kind of feels. It feels like it's like this dominating film over everything else, and nothing else just stands a chance because it has flashy stars, high production value. I mean, it has the same production value that any of his features do in terms of their set design, their costumes. I think it comes down to, does Wes Anderson just have enough fans within the Academy? It's not a bad short. It's not a bad movie. It's not divisive or anything. If you love Wes Anderson, why wouldn't you vote for it?
Yeah.
Is the question.
Well, I think it might be because Red, White, and Blue is like short film bait. And the issue is like, you know, so there.
I don't think that this is a done deal for Henry Sugar. I want to be clear. I am predicting it to win. But Red, White, and Blue is the one that I also believe would defeat it if we are going to see it get taken down.
Do you know Ryan Castleman?
Yeah, I love Ryan.
He does great videos. He does like very detailed videos.
Subscribe to
good After Effects in his videos too. He did one where he talked about watching the shorts. He and his partner interviewed people coming out of the theater, you know, theater of old folks, and like all of them said Red, White, and Blue was hitting for them. I might even predict Red, White, and Blue, and I don't know if I think it's very dangerous. This is very dangerous. I haven't even seen it.
What? I do think that, having seen it, I still think it has a very strong chance.
But what about the Academy members who haven't seen anything else and only want to give something to Wes Anderson? Does that exist?
There might be people,
or are people not?
I think there would be. I think there would be people who legitimately, without even watching his own short, would vote for him just because he's here.
Yeah, there could be some dishonesty at play where people, or maybe they've just seen that one and they're like, I don't care and I liked that short a lot, and so there you go.
Yep. It's not unfair to say that Wes has an unfair advantage over everybody else in this category. But if we're just predicting here, not talking about what should win, I think that is the deciding factor of all to consider, which is that there are going to be some voters who are not even going to watch them. They will just say, oh, that's the Wes Anderson one, right? Yeah, I like him. They can't do that for any other filmmaker in the category.
That might sway me over, just the idea that some people are going to be like, maybe they've seen just that one and they feel that they don't need to see any more.
I want you to stick with it because I want you to... No, because if you are right, I want you to have that satisfaction.
I want me to have it too, but I don't like being wrong. And so like, if I'm like, 1 point down from everybody else, that's just going to be an inherent disadvantage for my entire
accuracy. But here's the thing though, and something that we haven't really talked about yet. We've had a couple of disagreements, but not many. Something is going to happen on Oscar night that I don't think that any of us are going to see coming. What about you?
I didn't realize I was casting votes for these. I don't have the...
You're the one that abstains from the
I abstain from the shorts because I don't put in the time to research and to watch them. Or I haven't this year. Mainly because I've been working on my app.
It's a great app, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Final category is live action. Nope. Final category is animated short. I think there are 3 contenders here as well. You have Letter to a Pig. You got 95 Senses, which is kind of like the Twitter Letterboxd, more critical consensus fave. And then there's War is Over, which is the villain of that contingent.
Oh, yeah.
Here's where I'm going to predict something that I don't think should win is going to come out.
Let me tell you something. I watched that short, and I actually was digging it at first. It had a really, really great animation style. It was presented in a way that was highly cinematic. Thomas Newman's score was going a long way. And then there is this awful needle drop that occurs within the movie at the very end. And it just completely derailed the entire experience for me. And
I wonder what plays.
It's so incredibly manipulative and so cheesy and so, I just think, bland in its messaging. The same way, like we were saying before, how could it be that the worst short sometimes wins? The same question that we're asking ourselves all these years later about, like, how did something like Green Book win Best Picture? Mm-hmm. How did Bohemian Rhapsody win 4 of its 5 nominations and almost win Best Picture even that same year?
Normie catnip.
Right, and I think that War is Over is that. 95 Senses, I would agree with you, is probably the best one and is the one I think I personally would vote for.
Yeah,
and
I
think
it was very good.
And I think Letter to a Pig has like the most breathtaking animation.
Letter to a Pig, I think, has a disadvantage in that it's not in English, which most of the winners are in the category.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be like as acclaimed as 95 Senses, and I also see some people being a bit confused by the messaging or whatever. And so I think it's actually, I would put it at number 3 behind the other two. I think
Same.
95 Senses for sure has some passion. You have Tim Blake Nelson. Yeah, War is Over does seem like it has a message that's very strong. The animation does look nice. Can I ask you how cute is the pigeon?
Did I mention it was emotionally manipulative?
Oh, okay.
I feel like that if I was reading between the lines even slightly, I would have gotten that from you.
Guys, it's so bad. It's so bad. I think that's why it's going to work, because it's bad on a level that people like us thinks is bad.
Right.
It's not bad on a level that a normal person would watch it and go, oh,
Yeah.
that was awful. They would say that about something like Letter to a Pig, you know, because it's too esoteric and too odd for them to wrap their minds around about what it's even about. 95 Senses, although I do think it is the best one and it should win the category, I worry that it's told in a way that's too modest and simple, that it doesn't then like leave the impact that it probably should on most people. Where War is Over like just has this feature level like animation. It feels like you're literally watching 1917 in animated form, you know?
They go nuts for that genre too.
Thomas Newman's score, but he's also like got this ability with his music to capture people's wonder and like transport them and make them feel like what they're watching is prestige. Oh my God. I hate that I'm predicting it. I really, really do. But what was that one? Two Distant Strangers was one, right?
Yeah.
And then there was Skin that one year too.
Yeah.
It's like this just happens. This happens in these categories, and this is the villain that I'm going with this year.
I've never
agree.
heard such a compelling argument for why I should predict a short film. And like, I fucking do not like this. I don't want it to win. I hate it, but it's gonna win.
All right, we've conquered, and those were the Oscar predictions. I know the audience really loved hearing from you. Where can they find more of you speaking?
Well, for those of you that did love hearing from me, I do have a podcast called the Next Best Picture Podcast, part of nextbestpicture.com, where we track award season all throughout the entire year. Plus, also not just awards, but just dive into the appreciation of filmmaking in general. We interview creatives throughout the year. We review films on our podcast and in written form. And we provide commentary on what we feel is going to be an awards contender or not. There's some other really cool stuff that we're working on that we're bringing to the website over time. Next Best Picture is something that I'm incredibly proud of, and something that even with you guys, like just connecting over stuff like this, it's not about so much the awards. It's about appreciating good people, good work, and just a love of film. And that's what we really, really try to communicate over at Next Best Picture, is bringing the community and the internal team together for this art form that we all just love and appreciate. So if you want to hear more of that, then you can find me on nextbestpicture.com.
You can also become a patron of Next Best Picture, which on Patreon, which I am a proud patron of.
I didn't actually know this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was one time where I was like, I want to listen to the rest of the podcast, so I did it.
That's
Surprise.
guys, that's amazing. Thank you.
Hey, it's
our Patreon, we give exclusive podcast content. We do connect with our patrons as well in a more direct way. So if you want to help support us, I hope that we are able to give you some extra content that you feel is worth it.
Making a website like Next Best Picture and having a podcast and everything to go along with it is an insane act that only happens when you're just super passionate and driven to do something. So I support that. I like the ambition. You do a great job with it.
Thank you.
So it's a really good resource for award stuff.
And you know what, too? What you guys have built with your channel as well, and what you've done with the app. I mean, it's amazing. I gotta say, and I see the following that you guys have just made over time. And I told you this when I first met you. I was a fan of you guys. And when I saw the way you guys were reacting to the awards, I was like, my God, they are behaving and reacting the same way I do, just internally. But then you guys do also this really in-depth analysis too, and reviews of movies. You're not just about the awards analysis and reactions. You guys actually do what we do too, to communicate to people that there is an appreciation here for the art form. And I think that is very, very important in a time where a lot of people tend to look at awards pundits and think they're just about awards. They don't really care about what goes into any of this, as far as the craft. And I think that's just super important. I really, really appreciate that you guys do that.
You can make your final awards predictions on my app, Award Expert. And I'm really excited about the update that is forthcoming. This year, we only did the Academy Awards just to keep things small. But right at the top of the Oscars, assuming everything goes well, you'll be able to predict next year's Academy Awards for you fiends out there, and I know there are many of you. And you'll be able to predict other awards like SAG, and we'll see what else I put in there. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but I'm definitely going to present an event that people can put their favorite movies of the year there, so you can start tracking early in the year for 2024 what your favorite movies are. And we'll be able to compare that to what people actually think is going to happen, which will be really fun by the end of the year. Trying to roll out a bunch of features this year so that by the time we get to next year's Oscars, it's going to be a whole new app. Just join now. It's completely free. It's on both the App Store and the Play Store.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Are you ready to talk about Dune Part 2 for next year's Oscars?